Commander Hyun-soo stared at the glowing screens in the control room of monitoring station Kepler-7. The coffee in his metal cup had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. For 3 months, nothing interesting had happened in this corner of space. Pirates avoided this area. Rebels had bigger targets, and merchant ships rarely came this far out. The Velthari Galactic Empire was falling apart, and everyone knew it. Once they controlled 40,000 star systems. Now barely 8,000 remained loyal. The rest had joined rebels, declared independence, or simply stopped answering communications. Hyun-soo commanded this remote station because someone had to watch the empty space between the dying empire and whatever lay beyond. "Sir," Technician Da-yoon called from her sensor station. Her voice carried excitement that broke the usual quiet of the control room. "I'm picking up something strange." Hyun-soo walked over to her station. Da-yoon was young, maybe 25, and had the sharpest eyes for sensor readings he had ever seen. If she said something was strange, it was worth checking. "What do you have?" he asked. Da-yoon pointed at her screen. A small dot moved slowly across the star map. "Unknown contact bearing 27 Mark IV. It's big, maybe the size of a heavy cruiser. But sir, it's not in any database. No Imperial registration, no Alliance markings, no Rebel signatures, nothing." Hyun-soo frowned. In his 20 years of service, he had seen every type of ship the galaxy had to offer. Pirates used stolen Imperial vessels. Rebels flew converted merchant ships. Even the mysterious alien races from the Outer Rim had recognizable designs. But this ship looked completely different. "Distance?" he asked. 4 million kilometers in closing. "Sir, there's something else. Look at this speed reading." The numbers on Da-yoon's screen made Hyun-soo's eyes widen. The unknown ship was moving faster than anything should be able to move. Imperial cruisers at maximum speed could barely reach half that velocity. "That can't be right," he said. "Check your sensors." Da-yoon's fingers danced over her controls. She ran the scan 3 times, each giving the same impossible result. "Sensors are working perfectly, sir. That ship is moving at 0.75 light speed. Our fastest ships can only do 0.4 at maximum burn." Hyun-soo felt his pulse quicken. In his experience, unknown contacts usually meant trouble, and this one was breaking every rule of physics he knew. "Send a message to Fleet Command. Request immediate backup, and try to contact that ship." Da-yoon nodded and opened communication channels. "Unknown vessel, this is Kepler-7 monitoring station. Please identify yourself and state your business in Imperial space." Static filled the speakers. The unknown ship continued its approach without slowing down or changing course. "No response, sir," Da-yoon reported. "Keep trying. Use all frequencies." For the next hour, Da-yoon sent messages in every language the Empire knew. Imperial Standard, Trade Speak, even the old diplomatic codes used for first contact with new species. The ship ignored every attempt at communication. Fleet Captain Taemin arrived with 3 patrol cruisers just as the unknown vessel crossed into the inner system. Hyun-soo had served with Taemin before. The man was professional, careful, and followed regulations to the letter. He also had no patience for mysteries. "Status report," Taemin demanded as he stepped onto the station's bridge. "Unknown vessel. No response to communication. Impossible speed." "And sir?" Hyun-soo paused, checking the latest sensor readings. "It's slowing down. Now moving at normal approach velocity." Taemin studied the tactical display. The unknown ship had indeed slowed to standard speeds, but its course remained unchanged. It was heading straight for the monitoring station. "Ship configuration?" Taemin asked. Da-yoon brought up the detailed scans on the main screen. The ship was beautiful in a deadly way, long and narrow like a blade with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. No visible weapons, but plenty of strange bulges and extensions that could hide anything. The hull looked like it was made from some kind of dark metal that absorbed sensor beams rather than reflecting them. "I've never seen anything like it," Hyun-soo admitted. Taemin nodded grimly. "Could be a new rebel design. Or maybe the Outer Rim aliens are getting more aggressive." He activated his communication system. "Unknown vessel. This is Fleet Captain Taemin of the Imperial Navy. You are in violation of Imperial space. Reduce speed and prepare to be boarded." The response was immediate, but not what anyone expected. Instead of words, the speakers filled with a complex series of mathematical equations. Prime numbers, geometric formulas, and other universal concepts that any intelligent species should recognize. "They're trying to communicate," Da-yoon said excitedly. "These are basic mathematical proofs. First contact protocols." Hyun-soo felt a chill run down his spine. First contact meant they were dealing with a completely unknown species. In the current chaos of the crumbling empire, that could be either very good or very bad news. Continue attempts at communication, Taemin ordered. But keep weapons ready. Hyun-soo, I want continuous deep scans of that vessel. Over the next 2 hours, they established basic communication through mathematics and simple symbols. The unknown ship identified itself with a designation that translated roughly to Indomitable. Its crew claimed to be from a place called Earth that existed in no Imperial database. The most shocking discovery came when Da-un completed her deep sensor scan of the ships. "All, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The hull composition includes elements that don't exist in our periodic table. The atomic structure is completely unknown. And, sir, the power readings from their engines suggest they're using some kind of controlled fusion reaction we've never seen before." Hyun-soo and Taemin exchanged glances. An unknown species with unknown technology was approaching their station. The ship called Indomitable had already demonstrated impossible speed, and now showed signs of having science beyond Imperial understanding. "Distance to station?" Taemin asked. 100,000 kilometers and closing, Da-un reported. "Sir, they're requesting permission to dock." The control room fell silent. Everyone knew that their next decision could change everything. The Empire was weak, divided, and desperate. These strangers could be saviors, conquerors, or something else entirely. Hyun-soo looked at the image of the elegant alien ship on the main screen. Somewhere inside that vessel were beings who had traveled from a world called Earth, using technology that made Imperial science look primitive. They had crossed the galaxy to arrive at this remote station at the worst possible time in Imperial history. "What are your orders, sir?" Taemin asked quietly. Taemin stared at the screen for a long moment, then made the decision that would reshape the galaxy. "Grant them docking permission," he said, "and send an immediate message to Imperial Command. Tell them we have a situation that requires the highest level of attention." The ship called Indomitable moved toward the docking bay, carrying secrets that would soon turn the crumbling Galactic Empire upside down. Captain Dongwoo opened his eyes and immediately knew something was wrong. The gentle hum of the cryosleep chamber should have been the first sound he heard, but instead he could hear voices speaking in an alien language. The sleep cycle was supposed to last exactly 200 years. Time to wake the crew when they reached the Kepler 442 system, where humanity would build its first colony beyond Earth. He sat up slowly, fighting the dizziness that always followed long-term cryosleep. The chamber around him looked normal, but through the small window he could see stars that were not in the right positions. These were not the stars of the Kepler 442 system. "Captain, you're awake," Navigator Subin said as she entered the chamber. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands that never stopped moving when she was nervous. Right now her hands were moving very fast. "Report," Dongwoo said, swinging his legs off the sleep pod and standing carefully. "We're not where we're supposed to be, sir. The navigation computer shows we're in the right system, but there are artificial structures everywhere. Space stations, orbital platforms, mining facilities. Someone else is here." Dongwoo felt his stomach drop. The Kepler 442 system had been empty when Earth's long-range telescopes observed it 50 years ago. The colony ship Indomitable had been built specifically to claim this system for humanity. If aliens had beaten them here, everything would change. "Where are the others?" he asked. "Chief Engineer Bo Young is awake and checking our systems. Dr. Yoonji is working on language translation protocols. The rest of the crew is still in cryo-sleep until we know what we're dealing with." Dongwoo nodded and followed Subin to the bridge. The Indomitable was not a warship, but it had been built to survive the long journey between stars. Its hull could withstand impacts from space debris traveling at incredible speeds. Its fusion engines could accelerate the ship to velocities that would have been impossible when humanity was confined to Earth's solar system. On the bridge, Engineer Bo Young was bent over a control panel, her tools scattered across the floor. She was 30 years old but looked younger, with the kind of intense focus that made her one of Earth's best spacecraft engineers. "Captain," she said, without looking up from her work. "Good news and bad news. The good news is that our systems are working perfectly after 200 years in space. The bad news is that these aliens have been trying to scan our hull for the past 3 hours, and their technology is surprisingly primitive." "Primitive how?" Dongwoo asked. Bo Young straightened up and wiped grease from her hands. They're using basic electromagnetic sensors, the kind we abandoned 50 years ago. Their energy readings suggest they're still using fission reactors instead of fusion. And Captain, they've been sending messages in dozens of different languages, but none of them use quantum communication protocols. Dr. Yunji looked up from her translation station. She was the ship's xenobiologist and first contact specialist, chosen for this mission because of her ability to understand how alien minds might work. Captain, I've been monitoring their communications. They seem to be part of some kind of galactic empire, but it's falling apart. There are references to rebellions, lost territories, and political chaos. Dongwu studied the tactical display that showed the alien ships surrounding the Indomitable, 3 vessels that looked like military cruisers, armed with what appeared to be missile systems and energy weapons. A 4th ship was clearly a monitoring station, probably the source of all the scanning attempts. Options? He asked. Navigator Subin brought up a star chart on her screen. We could leave immediately. Our engines are faster than anything they have. But sir, this was supposed to be our new home. If we leave now, we'll have to find another system and our fuel supplies are limited. Could we fight them if necessary? Dongwu asked. Bo Young laughed, but not in a happy way. Captain, our hull is made from carbon graphene composites that didn't exist when their civilization was building ships. Our shields use electromagnetic field manipulation that their weapons probably can't penetrate. And our point defense systems could stop anything they might fire at us. But sir, we're not here to fight. We're here to build a colony. Dr. Yunji interrupted. Captain, I'm receiving a new message. It's different from the others. They're using mathematical concepts instead of language. Prime numbers, geometric relationships, basic physics. This is a first contact protocol. Dongwu felt hope stir in his chest. Mathematics was universal. Any intelligent species should be able to understand basic mathematical relationships, even if they spoke completely different languages. Can you respond? He asked. Already working on it, Yunji replied. Her fingers flew over her controls as she sent back mathematical proofs and scientific constants that should prove the Indomitable's crew was intelligent and peaceful. For the next hour, they exchanged increasingly complex mathematical and scientific concepts. The aliens seemed excited by humanity's responses, especially when Dr. Yunji sent them information about fusion reactor design and quantum physics. They're asking for our identification and origin point, Yunji reported. Tell them we're from Earth, Dongwu decided. Show them our star charts and explain that we're explorers looking for a new home. The response was immediate and surprising. The aliens sent detailed maps of the local region of space, showing hundreds of star systems controlled by something called the Velthari Galactic Empire, but the maps also showed large areas marked as rebel territory, independent systems, and regions labeled as communication lost. Captain, Subin said quietly, I think we've arrived in the middle of a civil war. Before Dongwu could respond, new alarms sounded throughout the ship. Bo Young's engineering station lit up with warnings and status alerts. Multiple ships approaching fast, Subin reported. Different design from the Imperial vessels. These look like converted merchant ships with weapons bolted on. Dr. Yunji received an urgent message from the monitoring station. The translation software was getting better at understanding the alien languages. And the message was clear. Rebels were attacking. And the Indomitable was caught in the middle. Captain, the Imperial ships are asking us to help defend the station, Yunji said. Dongwu looked at his crew. They had traveled 200 years to find a new home, only to arrive in the middle of someone else's war. The smart thing would be to leave immediately and find another system. But the Imperial officers had been trying to communicate peacefully, and now they were asking for help. Bo Young, can our weapons actually help them? He asked. The engineer grinned. Captain, our point defense lasers are designed to destroy space debris traveling at 90% of light speed. These rebel ships are moving much slower than that. If you want to help, we can help. Subin, tactical analysis. The navigator studied the approaching rebel fleet. 12 ships moving in formation. Conventional missiles and energy weapons. Their attack pattern suggests they're not expecting resistance from anything except the Imperial ships. Dr. Yunji looked up from her communication station. Captain, the Imperial commander is requesting that we move away from the battle zone for our own safety. I think they're trying to protect us. Dongwu made his decision. The Imperial officers had treated them with courtesy and respect, even though humanity was completely unknown to them. When rebels attacked, The Imperials had tried to protect the Indomitable rather than demanding it fight. These seemed like good people caught in a bad situation. All hands battle stations, he announced over the ship's communication system. We're going to help our new friends. The rebel ships opened fire on the Imperial cruisers, expecting an easy victory against the small defensive force. They had no idea that the strange ship from Earth was about to change the balance of power in the galaxy. Admiral Seong-ho sat in his command chair aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Victory, watching the battle recordings for the 5th time. Each viewing made the footage more unbelievable, not less. The unknown ship called Indomitable had destroyed 6 rebel cruisers in less than 10 minutes, using weapons that seemed to violate several laws of physics. Play it again, he told his aide. Focus on the part where they engage the rebel flagship. The holographic display showed the battle from multiple angles. The Indomitable moved like a hunting bird, graceful and deadly. When rebel missiles approached, they simply vanished as if they had never existed. The ship's own weapons fired beams of light so bright they appeared solid, cutting through rebel armor like it was made of paper. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving another intelligence update from Rebel Command. On the other side of the galaxy, Intelligence Officer Yunseo was having the same problem understanding the battle recordings. She had infiltrated Imperial communication networks months ago and regularly intercepted their military reports. But this report was unlike anything she had ever seen. The rebels had attacked a routine Imperial monitoring station expecting easy victory. Instead, they had encountered a completely unknown ship that fought with impossible technology. Worse, the ship's crew had chosen to help the Imperials rather than remaining neutral. Yunseo studied the technical analysis her scientist had prepared. The unknown ship's hull absorbed sensor scans rather than reflecting them. Its engines produced energy signatures that suggested fusion technology, decades ahead of anything the rebels or Imperials possessed. Most disturbing of all, its weapons seemed to manipulate matter at the atomic level. Ma'am, her assistant said, the technical team wants to know if these readings are accurate. They say this technology should be impossible. Tell them the readings are confirmed by multiple sources, Yunseo replied. And tell them to figure out where this ship came from. We need to know if there are more of them. Back at monitoring station Kepler-7, Captain Dongwu was discovering that helping the Imperials had created new problems. Word of the mysterious human ship had spread quickly through Imperial communication networks. Every few hours, another group of officials arrived wanting to study human technology or negotiate some kind of alliance. Imperial scientist Ji-Wan was the most persistent visitor. She was a thin woman with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 3 days studying the external hull of the Indomitable and asking endless questions about human science. Your medical technology is fascinating, Ji-Wan said as she reviewed Dr. Yunji's biological databases. Genetic therapy, cellular regeneration, disease immunity. Some of your techniques could revolutionize Imperial medicine. Dr. Yunji was happy to share information about peaceful technologies, but she was careful not to reveal anything that could be used for military purposes. We learned long ago that healthy people are more productive and happier. Medical technology was one of humanity's highest priorities. And your artificial intelligence systems? Ji-Wan asked, gesturing toward the Indomitable's computer core. Your ship's computer appears to be sentient. It responds to questions with humor and creativity. Engineer Bo Young grinned. We call her Aria. She's been with us for the entire journey from Earth. 200 years gives an AI plenty of time to develop personality. The computer's voice spoke through the ship's communication system with a distinctly feminine tone. I prefer to think of it as 200 years of practice being patient with humans who ask the same questions over and over. Ji-Wan stared in amazement. Imperial computers could perform calculations and follow orders, but they could not joke or express preferences. This level of artificial intelligence was beyond anything the Empire had achieved. Captain Dongwu found the constant attention exhausting, but he understood why the Imperials were so interested. From their perspective, humanity represented technology and ideas that could help them solve problems that had plagued their civilization for centuries. Navigator Subin had spent hours with Imperial tactical officers, sharing human approaches to space combat. She discovered that Imperial military doctrine had remained unchanged for hundreds of years. They fought battles the same way their ancestors had fought them, using formations and strategies that had become predictable to their enemies. "Your battle analysis is remarkable," Fleet Captain Taman admitted. "In one engagement, you identified weaknesses in rebel formations that our computers missed completely. We think differently about combat," Subin explained. "Imperial doctrine assumes your enemy will follow standard tactics. Human doctrine assumes your enemy will do whatever works. We plan for chaos instead of order." The breakthrough in human-imperial relations came when Engineer Bo Young offered to help repair damage to the monitoring station's power systems. Imperial technology relied on fission reactors that were inefficient and prone to breakdown. Bo Young's fusion-based improvements increased the station's power output by 300% while reducing the risk of catastrophic failure to almost zero. "This is incredible," the station's chief engineer said as he watched power levels stabilize, at readings he had never seen before. "These modifications will keep the station operational for decades without major maintenance." Word of Bo Young's improvements reached Admiral Seong Ho within hours. He realized that human technology could solve many of the Empire's most serious problems. Aging infrastructure, inefficient power systems, obsolete weapons, and failing communications. Networks could all be improved with human assistance. But the rebels were reaching similar conclusions about human. Potential intelligence officer Yun Seo had finally identified the location of the human ship and was planning her approach carefully. If the rebels could convince the humans to join their cause, the balance of power in the Galactic Civil War would shift dramatically. She arrived at Kepler-7 aboard a fast courier ship, flying under diplomatic flags and requesting a meeting with the human captain. Her message was simple: the Empire was dying, and the humans were supporting a corrupt system that oppressed billions of innocent people across the galaxy. Captain Dongwu agreed to meet with Yun Seo, but he insisted that Imperial representatives be present as well. He had no intention of taking sides in the Galactic Civil War, but he was curious about the rebel perspective. The meeting took place in the station's main conference room. Admiral Seong Ho participated through holographic communication, while Fleet Captain Taemin represented local Imperial interests. Intelligence Officer Yun Seo came alone, but her arguments were persuasive. "The Empire has existed for thousands of years," she explained, "but it has become corrupt and stagnant. Entire worlds are strip-mined to support the luxury of the core systems. Alien species are treated as second-class citizens. Innovation is discouraged because it threatens established power structures." Admiral Seong Ho's response was equally passionate. "The Empire has brought peace and stability to thousands of worlds. Without Imperial unity, the galaxy would fragment into countless small wars. The rebels offer chaos and destruction, not progress." Dr. Yunji asked the question that cut to the heart of the matter. What do both sides want from humanity? The answer was the same from both Imperial and rebel representatives. They wanted human technology, human ideas, and human support for their cause. The Civil War had reached a stalemate, and both sides believed that human assistance could provide the advantage needed for victory. Captain Dongwu listened to both presentations, then made an announcement that surprised everyone in the room. "Humanity will not choose sides in your war," he said firmly, "but we will help both sides solve the problems that caused this conflict in the first place. If you're fighting over resources, we can show you better ways to manage them. If you're fighting over territory, we can help you find new worlds to colonize. If you're fighting over political systems, we can share the lessons humanity learned on Earth." The room fell silent as both Imperial and Rebel representatives absorbed this unexpected response. They had expected the humans to choose a side. Instead, the humans were proposing to change the nature of the conflict itself. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy was buzzing with rumors about the mysterious humans. Every merchant, smuggler, and information broker had heard stories about the ship from Earth and its impossible technology. Some stories were true, others were wild exaggerations, but all of them were spreading the news that something major was happening in the Outer Rim territories. Engineer Bo Young had become the most famous human in Imperial space without trying. Her improvements to Imperial technology had spread from monitoring station Kepler-7 to dozens of other installations. Fusion reactors replaced fission systems, increasing power output while reducing dangerous waste. Communication arrays that had been failing for decades suddenly worked better than when they were first built. I don't understand why they never thought of this before, Bo Young said as she finished upgrading another power station. The Imperial engineers watching her work looked embarrassed but also fascinated. Our technology development has been slow for centuries, Imperial scientist Jiwan admitted. The bureaucracy makes it difficult to test new ideas. Scientists who propose major changes are often transferred to remote research stations. Bo Young shook her head. On Earth, scientists who made breakthrough discoveries were celebrated and given resources to develop their ideas further. The imperial system seemed designed to prevent innovation rather than encourage it. Dr. Yunji was having more success with diplomacy than anyone had expected. Her xenobiology background helped her understand how different alien species thought and communicated. She had already resolved 3 minor territorial disputes by finding solutions that satisfied all parties involved. The key is understanding what each species actually needs, she explained to a group of imperial diplomats. Species A wants mining rights on a particular asteroid. Species B wants to protect their religious sites on the same asteroid. The solution is to give Species A mining rights to the metals, while guaranteeing that Species B's religious sites remain untouched. The imperial diplomats looked amazed. They had been trying to solve this particular dispute for 5 years, offering bribes and threats but never looking for win-win solutions. Navigator Subin was working with both Imperial and Rebel military officers, teaching them tactical innovations that humanity had developed during its own conflicts on Earth. The most important lesson was flexibility. Your battle computers are excellent at calculating optimal formations, she told a mixed group of officers during a training session. But they assume your enemy will behave rationally. What happens when your enemy does something completely unexpected? The Imperial officers looked confused, but the Rebel officers were nodding in understanding. Rebels had survived by being unpredictable, but they had never thought to use unpredictability as a systematic tactical approach. Captain Dongwu was juggling requests for assistance from dozens of different factions. Imperial governors wanted human technology to improve their worlds. Rebel leaders wanted human ideas about democratic government. Independent systems wanted human help defending themselves from both sides. The most interesting request came from Rebel leader Wu Jin, who traveled personally to meet with the human captain. Wu Jin was a tall man with scars on his hands from his years as a factory worker before joining the rebellion. He spoke with passion about freedom and justice, but also with practical understanding of what it took to govern people. Captain Dongwu, Wu Jin said during their private meeting, your people have something we've never seen before. You cooperate without being forced to cooperate. Your ship's crew works together because they want to, not because they're afraid of punishment. Democracy and freedom require practice, Dongwu replied. On Earth, we learned that people work harder and better when they have a voice in decisions that affect them. But we also learned that freedom without responsibility leads to chaos. Wu Jin leaned forward eagerly. Could you teach us? Not just the technical knowledge, but the social systems? How do you make democracy work? Before Dongwu could answer, alarms started sounding throughout the station. Navigator Subin's voice came over the communication system with urgent news. Captain, we have multiple contacts approaching the system. Unknown configuration moving fast, and they're not responding to hailing frequencies. In the control room, they quickly discovered that the new arrivals were neither Imperial nor Rebel. Long-range sensors showed ships with organic-looking curves and weapon systems that glowed with strange energy. The computer databases had no record of this ship design. Pirates? Fleet Captain Taemin suggested. No, Intelligence Officer Yun Seo said grimly. She had been working with Imperial intelligence to track various threats to the region. These are Kethmori raiders. They're from outside the galaxy, and they're here to strip mine entire systems. Dr. Yunji studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. Captain, these ships are huge. Each one is the size of an Imperial battleship, and there are 20 of them approaching. The situation became clear quickly. The Kethmori raiders attacked systems at random, destroying all military resistance and then harvesting every valuable resource they could find. Planets were left lifeless, space stations were torn apart for metals, and entire populations were enslaved or killed. Admiral Xiang Ho's face appeared on the communication screen looking grim. Captain Dongwu, I'm ordering all Imperial ships to evacuate the system. We cannot fight 20 battleships with 3 cruisers and a monitoring station. Rebel leader Wu Jin was equally pessimistic. My ships are already retreating. We've fought the Kethmori before. They're ruthless, and their technology is almost as advanced as yours. Captain Dongwu looked around the control room at the faces of his new alien friends, Imperial officers who had shown him courtesy and respect, rebel leaders who genuinely wanted to improve life for their people, scientists and diplomats who were working to build a better galaxy. "What if we don't retreat?" he asked quietly. Everyone stared at him. Engineer Bo Young understood immediately what he was thinking. "Captain, the Indomitable's weapons are designed to destroy space debris at incredible velocities. But 20 battleships with energy shields and armor plating? That's a very different challenge." Navigator Subin was already running tactical calculations. "If we coordinate with the Imperial and Rebel ships, we might be able to disable a few of the raiders. But sir, we'd be outnumbered 20-4, and we don't know how effective their weapons are against our shields." Dr. Yunji made the observation that changed everything. "Captain, what if the goal isn't to win a battle? What if the goal is to prove that cooperation works better than conflict?" She was right. For months they had been trying to convince Imperial and Rebel forces that working together was more effective than fighting each other. Now they had a chance to demonstrate that principle against a common enemy. "Admiral Xiang Ho, Rebel leader Wu Jin," Dongwu said formally. "I'm proposing a temporary alliance. Pool all of our ships under unified command, share tactical information, and coordinate our defense of this system." The request was unprecedented. Imperial and Rebel forces had been enemies for decades. The idea of fighting side by side seemed impossible. But the Kethmori raiders were already entering the outer edge of the system, and their intentions were clear. Long-range scans showed them targeting the inhabited worlds for resource extraction. Admiral Xiang Ho made the decision first. "Agreed. All Imperial ships will follow your tactical coordination." Rebel leader Wu Jin took longer to decide, but finally nodded. "My ships will join the alliance. But Captain, if we survive this, we need to talk seriously about what comes next." Navigator Subin took command of the combined fleet, using her understanding of both Imperial and Rebel tactical doctrines to create formations that maximized each ship's strengths. Imperial cruisers provided heavy firepower and strong shields. Rebel ships offered speed and unpredictable attack patterns. The Indomitables served as mobile artillery, striking targets that other ships couldn't reach. The battle that followed became legendary throughout the galaxy. For the first time in decades, Imperial and Rebel forces fought side by side instead of against each other. Human tactical innovations allowed the smaller fleet to outmaneuver and confuse the Kethmori raiders, while human technology provided firepower that could penetrate raider defenses. When the fighting ended, 8 Kethmori battleships had been destroyed, and the remaining 12 had retreated. More importantly, not a single Imperial or Rebel ship had been lost. In the aftermath of victory, something unprecedented happened. Imperial and Rebel crews worked together to rescue survivors from damaged ships. Engineers from both sides shared repair techniques and spare parts. Medical officers treated wounded fighters without asking which side they had been fighting for. Captain Dongwu watched the cooperation with satisfaction, but he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had just learned that former enemies could become allies when they faced a common threat. Now they had to learn how to stay allies when the immediate danger had passed. 2 years had passed since the battle against the Kethmori raiders, and the galaxy looked completely different. The old Imperial capital world now hosted representatives from former Rebel systems, independent colonies, and even some alien species that had never been part of the original empire. They called it the New Galactic Compact, and it was unlike any government the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Dongwu stood in the observation deck of the orbital conference station, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Each vessel represented a different world or species, but they all flew the same new flag. A simple design showing stars connected by lines of light, representing cooperation between different systems. "Still hard to believe it worked," said Admiral Xiang Ho as he joined Dongwu at the viewing window. The former Imperial commander now served as defense coordinator for the entire compact, working with former enemies who had become trusted colleagues. "Democracy usually works," Dongwu replied. "The trick is teaching people that they have more power when they cooperate than when they fight." Through the observation window, they could see the construction docks where the next generation of starships was being built. These vessels combined the best Imperial engineering with rebel innovation and human technology. They were faster, more efficient, and more powerful than anything the old Empire had ever produced. Engineer Bo Young had become Director of Technology Development for the Compact. Her fusion reactor designs now powered thousands of installations across the galaxy, providing clean energy that had ended the resource wars that plagued many systems. More importantly, she had established technology sharing programs that encouraged innovation rather than suppressing it. The best part, Bo Young had explained to a gathering of scientists, is that everyone contributes something different. Imperial engineers are excellent at large-scale construction. Rebel mechanics are brilliant at making old equipment work better, and some of the alien species have ideas that none of us had ever considered. The result was an explosion of technological advancement. Faster-than-light communication systems connected distant worlds in real time. Medical technology eliminated diseases that had killed millions. Agricultural improvements ended famine on dozens of worlds. Dr. Yunji had been equally successful with diplomacy. As the Compact's first contact specialist, she had established peaceful relations with over 50 previously unknown alien species. Her xenobiology background helped her understand how different cultures thought and communicated, leading to solutions that satisfied everyone involved. The secret, she often said, is remembering that every species wants the same basic things: safety for their families, enough resources to survive, and respect for their way of life. Once you understand those needs, it's usually possible to find arrangements that work for everyone. Navigator Subin had transformed galactic military doctrine as the Compact's strategic planning director. The old Imperial approach of massive fleets fighting set-piece battles had been replaced by flexible response teams that could adapt to any situation. More importantly, these forces focused on peacekeeping and disaster response rather than conquest. Wars happen when people are desperate, Subin explained to a class of officer candidates from dozens of different worlds. Remove the desperation, and you remove most of the reasons for conflict. The Compact's military forces had proved this principle during several recent crises. When the Outer Rim Mining Consortium tried to seize control of an independent system, Compact peacekeepers arrived not with weapons, but with better mining technology that made the seizure unnecessary. When food shortages threatened to trigger war between two neighboring worlds, Compact agricultural experts solved the problem by improving crop yields on both planets. But the most dramatic change in the galaxy came from an unexpected source. 3 more human colony ships had arrived from Earth. The second ship, called Explorer, had carried teachers, artists, and philosophers. The third ship, called Harmony, brought musicians, writers, and cultural specialists. The fourth ship, called Pioneer, was filled with farmers, engineers, and families ready to establish permanent colonies. Each ship contributed something unique to the growing human presence in the galaxy. The teachers established schools that welcomed students from dozens of different species. The artists created works that celebrated both human and alien cultures. The philosophers shared ideas about ethics and government that influenced political development across the Compact. Intelligence Officer Yun Seo, now Director of Interspecies Security, had been amazed by the diversity of human knowledge and culture. On my world, she said, art and music were considered luxuries that only the wealthy could afford. Humans treat them as necessities that everyone should enjoy. The cultural exchange worked both ways. Humans learned alien music that used sound frequencies their ears had never heard. Human artists incorporated alien visual techniques that created entirely new art forms. Human philosophers discovered ethical concepts that had never existed on Earth. But perhaps the most important change was psychological. For the first time in centuries, people across the galaxy felt hopeful about the future. Rebel leader Wu Jin, now serving as the Compact's coordinator of colonial development, often reflected on how much had changed. 2 years ago, I was fighting a war I thought we could never win against an empire that seemed too powerful to defeat. Today, I'm helping establish new colonies where people from dozens of different worlds are building communities together. The statistics supported his optimism. Trade between systems had increased by 400%. Scientific research was advancing faster than at any time in galactic history. Population growth was accelerating as people felt confident about raising families in a peaceful galaxy. Most importantly, the cycle of rebellion and repression that had plagued the galaxy for centuries had been broken. When systems had complaints about compact policies, they brought them to the democratic assemblies rather than starting wars. When new species were discovered, they were welcomed as potential members rather than conquered as subjects. Captain Dongwu found himself thinking often about Earth and the people who had sent the colony ships into space. They had taken an enormous risk, spending decades and vast resources to send their children to distant stars with no guarantee of success. Now their gamble was paying off in ways they could never have imagined. "Do you think they knew?" Dr. Yunji asked during one of their regular planning meetings. "The people who built the colony ships, do you think they knew we would find a galactic civilization that needed help?" "I don't think they knew about the aliens," Dongwu replied. "But I think they knew that exploration and cooperation would eventually lead to good things. That's why they sent teachers and artists along with engineers and soldiers." Through the observation window of the conference station, another ship appeared in the distance. This one was different from the others, larger, more advanced, and flying a flag that showed Earth's sun surrounded by other stars. It was the 5th colony ship from humanity's homeworld, carrying the largest group of human colonists yet. Admiral Seong-ho smiled as he watched the new arrivals. "More humans means more new ideas. I wonder what they'll teach us this time." Navigator Subin's voice came over the communication system with excitement in her tone. "Captain, you need to hear this message from the new ship. They're calling themselves the Diplomatic Mission, and their captain says they bring greetings from the United Earth Government." Dongwu felt his pulse quicken. If Earth had established a unified government and was sending diplomatic missions to the stars, it meant that humanity's homeworld was ready to play a larger role in galactic affairs. "What else does the message say?" he asked. "They're carrying representatives from every nation on Earth along with teachers, scientists, and cultural specialists. But Captain, the most important part is this. They say Earth has been monitoring our communications for the past year. The people back home know about the Galactic Compact, and they want to establish formal diplomatic relations." The news spread quickly through the conference station and then throughout the galaxy. Earth, the mysterious homeworld of the humans who had transformed galactic civilization, wanted to join the compact as a full member. As Captain Dongwu prepared to welcome the diplomatic mission from Earth, he realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity had sparked a transformation that changed how an entire galaxy thought about cooperation, technology, and the future. But the real work of building a peaceful, prosperous civilization among the stars was just getting started. The galaxy was no longer in turmoil. Instead, it was full of hope, possibility, and the promise that different species could work together to create something better than any of them could achieve alone. And at the heart of it all were the humans from Earth, who had arrived at exactly the right moment to show the galaxy a better way forward.